active listings is up 76%. What is happening?
We've had a tough 24 months in transaction volume and across Canada, really.
Give me the sales pitch.
What we've always looked at is what is the cash flow going to be? Because if you have 3 properties and let's say the average monthly income is $2,000, you'd now have $6,000 a month that's recurring. You don't have to look at your stock portfolio. You don't care if the prices or the house is going up or down. The more of those assets you can buy, the higher the monthly income is going to become.
Welcome to the Tom Storey Show with Steve Karrasch and Tom Storey, where we discuss everything real estate or whatever else is on our minds.
Welcome back to the Tom Storey Show. This week's guest is Chris Slightham. Chris is the president of LePage Signature. They are a real estate brokerage in the Greater Toronto Area with over 1,500 realtors that work for them. I happen to be one of those people. I've been with the company for 10 years. Chris, we've got to know each other on a more, personal level over the last 5 years. In terms of understanding of the market, there's not too many people that have your position, your vantage point of what's going on based on the conversations that you're having. And I'm thrilled to have you back on the show. So thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for the invite, Tom. It's always great to be on the show. You guys do a fantastic job of bringing great topics. So I'm happy to be here.
Okay, Chris, you've been doing this a few years. There's a few gray hairs in that beard. There's actually gray hairs in my beard these days. I don't know what happened, but what's going on? This is a weird market. What is happening?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, we've had a tough 24 months in transaction volume in the GTA in particular, and across Canada, really. Ever since, we started having to tackle that incredible inflation that we all experienced in all parts of our lives, not just real estate and food and all the consumables we have. The Bank of Canada said, look, we got to put the brakes on here. And the way to do that is to make borrowing money more expensive. So, we're now seeing the results of that strategy, which is let's, slow things down. And so the Bank of Canada has done what they wanted to do. They've slowed it down. And then we overlay other things like tariffs and the fact that as the economy slows down as a whole, people stop making decisions, right? They've hit the pause button, and it's not like housing is not needed anymore or it's not in favor. It's just that, people are going to say, maybe I'll rent a little bit longer until I'm a little more confident, or I'll just pause on the fact that, my family's growing, but I want to make I need to upgrade the size of our space, but we're going to wait and see how things play out. Or I hear that interest rates are going to get lower. So why would I buy today when interest rates are higher if it's going to be less expensive for me, down the road? So there's a bunch of factors there that I think are contributing in today's market.
There was some pretty great headline numbers from the TREB stats for February. One of them was that active listings is up 76% year over year, February 25 to 24. Have you ever seen a year over year number that high? Have we seen that before? And then I guess the question is, well, if things are selling, what's actually selling?
That's a great question. I can't remember that significant a jump in the last decade at least, or ever in my career. And so it is a unique time. The other side of that equation is we had ultra low inventory. I mean, a level that was not healthy in itself. So, the conversation around the housing challenge we have in this country of a shortage was real, because to have a market our size and to have less than 10,000 units of any type, shape, size, I mean, we're talking about, a population, an extended population of closing in on 7 million people. Mm-hmm. So to have, less than 10,000 units or in around 10,000 units available at any given time that's a problem. So what's happened is, of course, it sounds like, oh my gosh, there's 76% more units available this year. Sure, it's higher than the 10-year average, but that's really where really a healthier, more balanced market should lie in this level. So that's why I always want to point out, it's where it came from was more the problem than I think than where it's actually at today.
Mm-hmm.
This is a better situation, healthier for the long term, stability of the market, and I think that's where we have to be careful we don't get caught up in that 76% number and realize, well, wait a second, that's actually, the 19,000 units that's available should be available.
I mean, Steve, haven't we talked about this forever where it's like all we did when inventory was low or selling fast was complain about the fact that we wish there was more homes for sale. We wish not everything had an offer date. Like we wish we could get an inspection clause in there, God forbid. Now we have it and no one's buying. So, I mean, Steve, can you explain this to me? Chris, can you explain this to me?
Now we have it and no one's buying, but we have it because nobody's buying.
Right.
Right. So, I mean, I'm saying this, I'm screaming it from the rooftops right now, and taking a lot of flack for it on my main channel of like, guys, this is a great time for people that really want to do their due diligence, go get a property that works for them. This is not a speculation time. I mean, I guess it's pointing out the speculation that was there, right? It's emphasizing that, but it's not, it's not a bad time. It's actually, I think if I was looking to enter the market, let's say for instance, first time buyer in my market, condo, one bed, down plus 10%. Also interest rates, down, let's call it 30% from this time last year, maybe more. Like it's a heck of a good time, but everybody gets caught in not wanting to buy a property because 2 months, 3 months down the road when you move in, it might be worth $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000 less for a period of time, of which might be a year or 2 or 3. But that is the problem that we have. We seem to be feast or famine. Like it just can't be anything in the middle. And I think right now, like Tom, when you were talking about your months of inventory, like we in Surrey would love to be in the situation you're in right now. Maybe not condos, but everywhere else. So I don't think it's that bad of a spot to be. But I mean, you do need the doom and gloom news cycle. So we're gonna need to title this episode something, right?
That's a good point, Steve. And the challenge is, I mean, let's call it what it is. We're in the business, right? We are in the business of selling real estate. So for a salesperson in real estate to say now's a good time is, I get it. People, well, you're of course you have to say that, Steve. I mean, you're in the business, right? But the reality is what I always like to point to is the data, right? Is to say, we were looking at yesterday, we within the company, we do a town hall meeting about the stats, and we were looking back at February of 2022. So right at the peak versus today in the market. And today in the market, we have just shy of 5 months of standing inventory. February of 2022, we had less than 1 month of standing inventory. We had 3 weeks of inventory. So I respect that, yes, we're in the business of selling real estate. And I know that, if public's watching and they're saying, well, yeah, but you guys are in the business of selling. Of course, you're going to say now's a good time. Well, I was saying in 2022, I'd be cautious in that moment when prices, if we looked at the charts from 2022 and between the fall of 21 and February of 22, the line goes like straight up on the pricing chart. Right, well off the 40-year sort of average price growth trend. So the way I say it is I don't right. You don't have to go out and buy a house right this minute. I get it, but you're right, Steve. I mean, when would you rather buy? Right, when the prices are up here and there's 3 weeks of standing inventory, or the prices are back at the trend line and there's 5 months of inventory and you've got some choice. And as Tom pointed out, you can negotiate and you can have a condition in there and you're not fighting over. But it's hard for consumers. I get it. I talk about Warren Buffett all the time because he's one of my favorite guys to listen to because I think he's pretty smart with his, concept of investing is, you want to be buying when people are selling and selling when people are buying, right? But it takes a lot of guts and patience to say, yeah, I got to go out there when others aren't doing the same thing en masse. Right? We're still selling lots of real estate, right? But it's not en masse. And so sometimes that's tough. So I think, that's the challenge we have, I think, as an industry, to help educate people. But I just try and point at the numbers. I'm not making up the numbers. These are coming from, our numbers we're in the Toronto market, of course, the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board market numbers. And you can see it in the math.
And to put that in perspective, Steve, I'm going to take the conversation a little Toronto focused here for a bit, but that means that during that time, Chris, there was more sales that happened in a 30-day period than there was active listings on the market for the entire market. Like it's wild to think that we went through a moment in time like that. And Chris, you just mentioned like to help educate people. I also think I'm going to put in a petition to get the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board to rename themselves as like the 7 big area. This is a bad name because it's so confusing. Like if you actually break down those 19,000 active listings at the end of February was the City of Toronto, Peel, Durham, Simcoe County, York Region. I'm blanking on 2 and I apologize, but there's 7 different areas. If you actually look at the City of Toronto, there was 7,800 active listings, not 19,000. And you know what was for sale? I mean, we all know 70% of them was condos. Like we don't have 20,000 semi-detached, detached homes for sale that, by the way, most of my clients want to buy right now. We have a lot of condos.
Yeah, on your point there, Tom. Last month, 42% of the sales last month were detached homes in the GTA.
Yeah.
Right. And so if 70% are condo inventory and 42% of the type of property that's selling is detached homes, there just isn't enough detached inventory in that mix.
So what needs to happen then, Chris, for things to pick up to a point where we're not having monthly news headlines saying how extreme listings are up? And it was actually interesting. Just final thought on the February stats is new listings year over year was actually pretty much the same. Like it's not like we had an influx of tons of new listings. It was kind of the absorption of the stuff that didn't sell from previous months that added up to this big 76% number. But now it's like, okay, tariffs are changing every 30 seconds. We don't even know by the time this episode comes out what's going on. So
7 times by this time this comes out, right?
I was telling Steve, it's like me in 2025. It's like I'm threatening my wife I'm going to go to the gym, but I've only gone for 2.5 days, but I've been talking about it nonstop for all of 2025. That's kind of how I feel about tariffs. So like, but what needs to happen for sales volume to pick up again? Like, what do we need to see happen?
Well, funny enough, Tom, the one thing we didn't talk about was weather. We had a week where the city, Toronto, was also very hard to get around, even though we're used to some snow here. We're not,
we're not Vancouver.
We're not. Yeah, exactly. But that has to happen. So we need some better weather. We need some certainty. And I think that's really the big message right now. And the headlines, are glamorous. A trade war. I mean, I don't even like that term. I think we have, some trade negotiations going on. But of course, the headlines in the news is trade war and trade war this and trade war that. Well, look, there's a change in leadership. They in the U.S. they have some ideas that are different than what were in place before, and they're trying to find a way to get there. They're going to bump and grind along and try to figure things out, like you alluded to. And one day we have tariffs on autos, and then we don't the next day, and then we have a pause on all the tariffs the next day, and now so it's going to be bumpy. And so when there's uncertainty, where it affects your thought process in terms of, okay, well, what does this mean for me as a worker in the Canadian economy? Does it affect my ability to earn a paycheck? Is that going to, is it going to affect my compensation this year in some way or another? Is it going to affect my company? Are they going to have to lay people off? There's a lot of very big, very real, very difficult questions, I think, going on in people's minds, and that has to be, acknowledged. And so whenever there's uncertainty, whether it's, trade, whether it's where inflation's going, where is the interest rate moving next, people pause. And so I think that's really what's happened. So what changes this? Well, let's get through this conversation about these trade issues, and let's get some certainty if that's possible. What is likely going to happen is interest rates are going to drop a little bit further. So that's actually a positive thing, because once we get through this, I think, I said this the other day to a group of people, I think that, we really get caught up in these emotions of the moment, which we're human. That's natural for us to do that. However, I think in the long run, we're going to be better for it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I still get an old-fashioned newspaper delivered to my door every day, and I was going through the paper today, and there's ads for Canadian bourbon or whiskey or whatever. I can't remember what it was exactly, and they're like, try this Canadian made choice or option, which right now in Ontario they've taken the American. From what I understand, I haven't been into a liquor store recently, so I don't really know for sure. But from what I understand, they've taken the American-made alcohol off the shelves as an example. Well, that makes more room for a Canadian product.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that are ultimately, when we go through challenging times, we learn a lot. And we come out the other side with that knowledge and ultimately in a better place. And what I would say is that, we're going through a temporary tough time here. And I think that when we come out the other side, we're going to be in a better spot. We're likely going to have lower interest rates. I think we're going to be more resilient than the news and the scary headlines probably indicate right now. And from there, you're going to see a lot of activity in the real estate market because people are going to get excited again, and there's going to be growth.
Realtors, it's time to up your game. Realty Ninja allows you to create a stunning lead capturing and hassle-free website that looks great and will match with your current brand. They are a sponsor of this show, and they're giving listeners 20% off your first year, and you don't pay $1 until you launch. Join the thousands of real estate agents across this country, including Steve, the cheapest person I know that uses their services. realtyninja.com/Tom. And now, back to the podcast.
Yeah, I think we're going to see us, let's say, I don't know what's going to happen here with all the trade stuff. Nobody knows. Even the guy making the decisions down south doesn't know what's going to happen tomorrow. They're going to change. There's a few days between when this is recorded and when it comes out. So they're going to change at least 7 times per day in that meantime. And we're going to have no idea. But then we've got this whole next level of uncertainty, which I think Canadians aren't even paying attention to right now, which is our own federal problems. And problems, I mean, we don't even know which direction we're going. We might have, 3 different prime ministers within a 60-day period. Who knows what the heck's going to happen with us. But where I'm focusing with people is I'm trying to say, guys, when you wait, whatever that I'm going to wait and see thing is right now, when you wait and see and you have confidence, guess what? So does everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're going to go back into craziness. So I'm not saying run out there and invest in properties. That's not what I'm saying to people. I'm not saying you got to buy and panic buy now and get into whatever you can. That's obviously not the case. But at the same time, you're going to wait so long that the people that are doing the right thing for their family right now, let's say I just am having a baby and I just need another bedroom, whatever that is, those people are the people that are going to look like geniuses because they're not paralyzed in fear.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is, the news cycle right now, I don't even think the Canadians really care about our own federal election as much as they care about what's going on down south. I really don't. And they're paralyzed by what's going on down south. So there's just so much opportunity that I'm seeing right now but here's the other side of it. And I guess we got to stop realtoring it a little bit, which is those people that are coming to market right now as buyers don't realize how good they have it because they weren't necessarily buyers 3 years ago, right? They weren't in that craziness. So they don't understand that this could turn against me in a very short period of time. Now, I don't think it will. I think there's still time towards the bottom, and I think that's why people are holding off. What is your thoughts on how long this is going to take in order to restore some sort of confidence?
It's a great question. I think that's everybody's in our industry's big question right now, Steve, is, and I don't know if we can answer it because what I really think we need to see is some stability in this trade conversation, and get some clarity. And I'd like to think that in the next 60 to 90 days, we're going to have that clarity, because I think the further we go along here, the negotiation or whatever is going to happen will happen. And whatever the result is going to be the result, right? You mentioned there we have a federal election that will likely be called this year. That has to be called at some point this year. That will be coming soon. The Liberal party will have a new leader in place shortly here, and so we get through that. But one other thing I also wanted to mention is, as I was thinking about your comment there, is I don't know if the general public understand how good interest rates actually are already.
Mm-hmm. They are.
Right. I'm not sure that because there's so much other news and noise in the world right now, like we have, sub 4% money right now available. In the banks are lending at below 4%. And so that's it. Like if you get a 3.99, let alone a 3.8 or something like that, I mean, that's an incredible interest rate. I mean, that same rate was, 6%, 20 months ago, Tom? Like
end of, yeah, I know, because I took one, end of 2023. Okay, so, but like Chris, what you're saying, like if you had told me as a real estate agent active in the market at the end of 2023, rates are 6.5 today, they're going to be high 3s, low 4s, by early 2025, I'd be like, all right, off to the races. Let's get ready again.
Doesn't work that way,
but
Tom.
It didn't happen.
That way.
But it didn't happen.
Here's how it works. So September 23, when I saw rates, the highest rate I saw was 6.39 on a 5-year fixed. When we were looking at renewing and we know our renewals coming up, my wife and I talk about it often. And she says to me, anything with a 4 in front of it, I'm happy. Let's hope it gets there. And now I just re-upped I haven't re-upped, but I just got an update on my rate from my bank. And it's down as low as I think 4.29 right now on the renewal. And she's like, you think we can get it lower? Like it's 75 basis points better than where we had hoped it was going to be. And we're like, let's hold out a little bit longer to see if we can get that 3.99. It's human nature.
Human nature. Yeah. And I think that generally consumers aren't aware of where rates really are today, because there's so much going on in the world right now that's not really the first thing you're thinking about. It is rushing out to buy a house. And I think, Steve, you made a good point, and I want to make that point as well. Is like, it's not like you've got to rush out today and buy a house. But what I certainly would love to do, and that's what we try to focus on, is educate people, is say, here is what's going on in the dynamic of the market. So just be aware of it so you can make a really good decision. Because sitting on the sidelines right now, if you're thinking like I need a bigger house, I don't think I can buy one, or I'd really like, the kids are gone now, I'd like to downsize, but I don't think now's the right time. Well, if that's just a gut feeling because of headlines or your sense of the tariffs or whatever, you might be pleasantly surprised how solid the opportunity is right now. And so I just encourage people to say, get out, talk to pros like you guys, and say, like, tell me a little more, like, give me a much deeper and clearer understanding about really what's happening in the market here, so I can make a better decision for me.
Chris, our company puts out some pretty amazing charts that show kind of where the overnight rate's at. And then you guys even have ones that go back 40 plus years in terms of just average sale price, City of Toronto, where, we know typically, good and bad, 6.5% has been the yearly increase in average sale price in the City of Toronto going back 40 plus years. Can you walk our viewers through maybe the argument that prices today are kind of where they should have been anyways, give or take? And I know we can't just cut off that part of the graph where it loops like this from, September 21 to Feb 22, but can you walk me through that?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So we go back, we like to study the data because, again, as you're probably getting the tone here, I like to make sure people are making really good decisions based on facts, not on a feeling or a sense or, oh, I think this. Here's exactly what's happened historically. And so hopefully that guides to, where you can make some good decisions. And what we did, Tom, is we look back at the average sale price 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and we implied, roughly 6.5% average annual growth, because that is the normal. As you said, we studied over 40 years of that data, and it's about 6.5% a year. And if you imply that price growth from those moments in time today, and you compare it to today's average sale price, it's almost right on in most cases. Some of it's actually below. So technically speaking, from a home buyer standpoint, it's reset below to where it would traditionally be. I mean, by $50,000 on $1 million, it's not immaterial money, but we're talking about $1,080,000, $1,001,000, average sale price today in the GTA market. So, but it's that close, like it's within percentage points. So, when we do that, when we realize that, yes, like to your point, that it's not actually a rounded curve. It's almost like it's a point and then back down, but it's been back down to this normalized level now since July of 2022. Right. So we're almost coming up, like this July would be 36 months since it came off its peak in the GTA and settled down between February of 2022 and July of 2022. It erased that, unhealthy, abnormal spike. And it's literally been sitting within about a $50,000 to $75,000 range, bouncing along since that moment in time. And so that floor on prices has been established for a number of different reasons. And it'd be hard to, go through all of them right now, but definitely the lower rates today versus, September of 23 are helping keep prices where they are with the inventory that we have, even with the expanded inventory choice we have right now. But that's where we see it. And so we're right where we would have been if we didn't have, look, the Bank of Canada knows, we all know, because we had 8% inflation here. Mm-hmm. Right? They made a mistake. Like, let's just say what it is. Like, they made a mistake. It's not like they purposely made the mistake. They were trying to make the best decisions they could in a global pandemic environment to try and stabilize our economy. But they made a mistake. They kept rates too low for too long. And, for a 6-month period, prices went bonkers.
So we got from A to B, but instead of just taking the car and driving, 100 the entire trip, we were driving 250, and then we were driving 30 kilometers per hour. And we got to the same place. It's just, the way in which we got there looked a little bit different. And, frankly, like, if very dangerous. There's lots of speeding tickets in there. And then you get a ticket for going too slow as well, just can never have it the nice, the nice way of doing things. Steve, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I do, because I just did the calculation. So that was an interesting little experiment I've just done. So I went back 1979. The average detached home price in the Fraser Valley was $80,000. Okay, and then went through all these spikes and different things. So I just went into a compound interest calculator, and I put it at $78,000, which was the actual price. And then the average rate of return over those, years is generally, we say, about 6.6%. That usually ends up being about where it is. And so I did the math on that. If it followed that regularly, our inventory is still technically overpriced, because that number over 46 years, which is when the MLS started, 1979 here, was 1.475. Today's detached is 1.489. So we're running about $14,000 hot right now.
Pretty close. Pretty close. Give Chris some credit.
But isn't that crazy, right? Now, that is off. Let's go back and see our price for the Fraser Valley was 1,765 for detached. So we're down almost 300K. Right. So yeah, it was super inflated, but now, and guess what? Last month, it turned positive again last month. Even though we have 10 months of supply in the detached market, the price has turned positive, which is highlighting something else we're seeing, which is seasonal pricing, which was never a thing before. And now seasonal pricing seems to be coming around. I wanted to bring up one thing because last time you were on, you focused hard, and I've just really internalized this. You focused hard on like, who cares where the asset is when you buy it? You're going to have a paid off asset when you retire. Right.
Yep.
And so I was like, you know what? Obviously that's the way I look. Like I have an investment property that cash flow. Well, it's very positive right now, but when my renewal comes, it'll probably be close to even again. I might make $100 a month if I'm lucky. Everybody says, well, why do you bother to do that? So I just did the math. I've owned that property for 4 years. My original mortgage I took out was $372,000 on it. Currently today, that mortgage is sitting at $335,000. So that's a $37,000 pay down that somebody else did for me.
Mm-hmm.
Hey folks, if you're looking for a real estate agent in the city of Toronto, let's face it, you gotta call my buddy Tom Storey of the Storey team and Royal LePage Signature in Toronto, Ontario. They're your obvious choice because Tom is not just the co-host of this podcast. No, he is a real life and top producing real estate agent in the city of Toronto. There's nobody out there that knows the condo market better than Tom and his team in downtown, but they do service the entire city of Toronto and any of your residential real estate needs. So if you're looking for an agent, do not hesitate to reach out to Tom, book a call with him using the link down below in the description of this podcast, and let Tom guide you through your real estate journey. And now back to the podcast. Right? Like I know everybody's looking for their, I need a 6 cap, I need a 10 cap in some small town, Ontario town or something like that. I just think it needs to be simplified from there. And that's, maybe I'm simple. No, I know I'm simple. Never mind. Let me rephrase that. But I just look at this and go, was my last 4 years of putting up with a tenant and the pain in the butt that they have been at certain times and other times not, was that worth $37,000? And I would say for the average person that's probably making 60 or 70 grand a year, it's probably very much worth it, right? To get an extra almost, let's say $8,000 per year, $9,000 per year. Not to mention the growth or the appreciation. It's all there too. But just
I'm actually surprised you didn't mention that because what's it worth today versus what you paid?
Oh, it's way down from the peak, Tom Storey. It's way down.
But when did you buy it? And who told you to buy it? And where's my referral fee?
You'll get it with the capital gains that's going to Justin Trudeau whenever I sell it in 30 years.
But Steve, you bring up a great point, and this is the one thing about real estate that we've found is that it's not glamorous, right? It's not, you can't watch it on your stock ticker and it's going, oh my gosh, it went up 3% in one day, or this stock did this, or, it's not that. It's a slow and steady. It's that patience is profitable concept that Warren Buffett talks about. He invests in stocks, although he has been quoted saying if he could have bought hundreds of thousands of homes in the US over the years, he would have bought them as an asset class because he believes in real estate so much as he understands what we understand, which it's slow and steady. So the return it's going to give you, and you're talking a 4-year moment in time. Let's look at that over 10 years. And let's imply, 3.5% price growth, not 6.7, which your average market does, right? Put that in your compound calculator at 3.5%. Imply the pay down you're going to have over 10 years on that mortgage. And 10 years from now, we're 6 more years from now from when you bought that property, it's going to be a pretty amazing result. And then that, the whole idea of hanging onto it and paying that off quietly, and it's not glamorous, but all of a sudden, if it goes up at 3.5% over 20 years, it's going to double in value in 20 years. It's going to pay off the mortgage. So, if it was a $400,000 investment, it's going to be worth $800,000 with no debt on it 20 years from now at 3.5%. We know it's likely to go up more, but I want to be conservative in my example here. And all of a sudden you wake up, because we're all, God willing, we're all going to wake up, 20 years from now, and with a little bit of luck on our side, we'll be there. And you've got this gift sitting there that's still producing income every month and has this big whack of equity sitting there that all you did was cobble together a down payment to start the process. But it's slow, maybe.
It's not exciting. We want more exciting things. I want to be able to flip a pre-sale contract, right?
Get some Bitcoin. That's really exciting. That'll do a lot for your blood pressure.
But Chris, what you changed my mindset for the way that the outlook that you have on holding properties long term is I was always so obsessed with what is my net worth based on what properties do I own and what is their current value. Mm-hmm. And when they're paid off one day, I will own it 100%. And you're like, who cares? Not who cares, but like, yeah, great. Yeah. It's worth that. But you also have a paid off asset that if you choose to rent it out, rent likely in 20 years, spoiler alert, might be a little bit more than it is today. You are now it's now paying basically for your retirement. So like, let's create a model here and let's use Steve as the example. He's got his primary residence. He has one investment property. Give me the Chris Slightham sales pitch just to Steve for him to buy 2 more properties to set his future up better than it is today. Like what does that look like? We're not talking about 100 doors. We're talking about your house and 3 investment properties. Like how does he have to think about it maybe different than just paying off his house now, because he should use that money to go buy number 2?
Mm-hmm. It's a great question. And I think really what we've always looked at is what is the cash flow going to be? Because ultimately everybody would like to retire, I think, at some point, or at least have the choice not to go to work every day. Right. Mm-hmm. And so if you love your job, like I do, I'll probably work till, I'm 100, but I have the choice to whether to do that or not, because if you have a couple of properties, and like if we take this example of 3 properties, and let's say the average monthly income in today's dollars is $2,000. Let's say once it's once you've paid your expenses, the mortgage is gone. So if you had 3 of those properties, you'd now have $6,000 a month coming in that's recurring every month. You don't have to look at your stock portfolio. You don't care if the prices or the house is going up or down. Generally, rents are going to be pretty stable. And so all of a sudden now you've created this, it's taken 20 years to get there, but you've created this recurring income for yourself that you don't have to, as I say, get out of bed in the morning worrying about, your basic needs. The more of those assets you can buy, the higher the monthly income is going to become. And you're right on the money, Tom. Is like, I don't care what they're worth at the end of the day. I really don't. Like, I'm not looking for, I've got $1 million property and I'm a millionaire from it. I just really want to know, like, what is my monthly income? Like if the value of the asset doesn't go up over time, it just gets paid for so that I now no longer have to pay a mortgage. I can take that income to live on. That's really all I focus on at the end of the day. And if you have a situation where you can, you can buy a couple of things along the way and get them paid for, it's a home run. So really, who cares what they're worth at the end of the day? Because I always say this, like, you don't want to spend the equity. It's like a situation where you hear, well, somebody, because we see it all the time. We're helping people buy and sell real estate all the time. And they bought a house 10 years ago and they still have a fairly high mortgage on it today because they kept going back and borrowing more and borrowing
so
more.
Much.
Right.
So much.
And because they wanted to, buy a new boat, or they wanted to, renovate something, or they wanted to buy a cottage, and so they just kept tapping that home, that equity line of credit that the bank was so generous in giving them. Well, the bank gave me a $200,000 line of credit. I guess I figured I should use it. Well, that's the most dangerous thing, right? And so, as long as you get these things paid for, because that's reducing your costs and maintaining your overhead low, and you get them paid for, and now all of a sudden you've got this cash flow forever.
Steve, can you push back on that? Like, let's say let's say the equity needed to buy 2 more investment properties for Steve is $100,000 each for another 2 condos in his market. That $200,000, I'm sure, Steve, at this point in your life, you're like, my main house is almost paid off. This one's doing really well for me. I'm just going to, if I had that, I would rather just put it in the stock market. It's just a safer bet because who knows what the next 5-10 years of real estate.
Not today, I wouldn't.
Well, okay, not today, but, well, maybe you buy the dip. But
I did buy the dip today.
So,
I bought Costco today.
Okay, so what would your response be to that? Why would you not do that versus what your other options could be?
I'm having trouble not. I mean, you're talking me into it right now. I don't know what to say. Like, it's
the key is leverage. I mean, that's the key to me.
Okay, let's think of it this way. Okay, so
you shouldn't lever your portfolio, your stock portfolio.
Let's use my example. So the money is not just sitting there, right? So it's not just like I got an extra $100,000 kicking around, and that money has to be leveraged out of somewhere. Because that's where I think most people are. Like, most of our investors don't have the down payment. They're, if anything, they're borrowing the 20% on a line of credit in order to buy that first place. And then they go, oh, well, I'm putting 20% down. And I'm like, no, that's 100% financing. And I'm no better. I did the exact same thing. I just happened to do it at a time when interest rates were basically free. And the property broke even at 100% financing. But like, I think the tough part there, Tom, would be you would have trouble convincing me to do that just because the cash isn't there.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, the cash needs to be there, and the cash isn't there for a lot of people right now. And when you not only negative cash flow on the property, but then you also negative cash flow on the extra mortgage that you just put on your property, that's where it becomes an issue. I think where you would talk me into it is if my mortgage gets so low on my principal residence that I can look forward and say, listen, I'm okay paying some out of pocket per month, right? Because let's say it's $100,000, that's going to be $500 a month I have to put on my line of credit, interest only. I might do that now.
Okay, but you say the cash isn't there, and I'm not going to tell the viewers what I know about you, but
cash isn't there.
Okay, so let's say let me make a wild guess here, and Chris, let me know if I think I'm in the ballpark here. Steve's saying cash isn't there because maybe cash is there, but the cash to be there would have to come out of a corporation and be paid tax on to become personal cash and then buy the property. Should Steve be thinking, well, maybe I buy these extra properties in a holdco or through my prec? Am I going somewhere with this?
Can't buy them in a prec, man.
Okay.
All you agents out there that I know are holding real estate in your prec, by the way, in British Columbia.
I am not.
That is against your license. So please don't do that. In Ontario, I have no idea.
Yeah. So, I mean, you'd have to speak to an accountant really to figure out what works best for you, but you can generally loan to an arm's length holdco to buy the investment property, right? So from a tax perspective, I think the bottom line, and these are tax questions that you'd have to figure out that works for you, but I think the bottom line is this. Leverage in buying real estate is where the secret sauce is. Do not over leverage yourself. So Steve, I agree with you. Like, if you're not in a position where, like, I'd never recommend anybody to push themselves to the limit where they're, oh gosh, I don't know if I can, if things don't go perfect, I'm not going to be able to pay all my bills every month. That is not ever a good plan. But if you are in a situation where your principal residence is completely paid for or very close, and you wanted to take $100,000 and know that, it's a forced savings plan is the way I look at it, right? Anytime you're paying them, like, there's good debt and there's bad debt. Good debt is, not massively leveraged total portfolio. Like, to your point, Steve, you leveraged yourself to buy that property, and you'd say that one property was technically, 100% financed. But in terms of your full real estate picture, your real estate was not 100% financed, right? You had a ton of equity in one of your residences, right? Or another property. I don't know what your story is, but I'm sure it was well balanced as a whole. And that's the way you have to look at it, and say, okay, what can I do as a whole to make this work for me? Because the sooner I buy that property, as my father told me from very young, Chris, the sooner you buy the real estate, the sooner it's paid for. It's a very simple concept. Don't kid yourself. You wait 5 years, it's going to take you another 5, right? You're just pushing that end result of getting whatever that asset is paid for down the road, and you're getting older, son. and so that was a lesson that he taught me very early on. And he said, don't underestimate the value of buying, especially the sooner you buy, the sooner it gets paid for. Because as I said earlier, look, 20 years, time is going to go by. And with a little bit of luck and health on our side, we're all going to be here. Right? So, your 20-year older self is going to thank you for the decisions you're making on your behalf today.
Yeah, that's why I push so hard for these, what I call kids. They're not kids. They're 25 to 28-year-old people that don't want to commit to anything. I just like, man, you're the person that should be buying the studio or 1-bedroom apartment at the cheapest rate possible, because maybe you're going to live there, maybe you're going to rent it out or whatever. But like, you're the folks that this is, not only is this built for you, but as soon as you actually get into it, like if you own any real estate at 25 years old, if all you do, the only thing you do is make that mortgage payment, you're going to be fine at 65. Absolutely fine.
Well, you look at our country. Look at everybody in our country that are homeowners today, right? Mm-hmm. What is it? 65% of Canadian homeowners do not have a mortgage, something like that. I think it's even higher, maybe. I can't remember exactly. It's a big number, which they don't talk about very often. But that's because they, back 30, 40, 50 years ago, that's what people wanted to do. They knew they should buy a house and pay it off as fast as they possibly can. That was the formula, right? And now we have real estate millionaires across the country that would not have had that asset and that much money. You have the baby boom generation now that is transferring wealth to the next generation, largely because they made home purchases when they were getting, because remember, my parents got married in their 20s, like back in that generation. You got married at 21, 22, 23, 24. Today, I don't know what the average age is now, on the demographic stats. I got married at 35. I know others are getting married at late 20s, early 30s. Some are getting married, I'm sure, later than that. But the lifestyle, the reality is life is a little different today than it was 50, 60, 70 years ago, right? And so, but the lessons that we should observe the lessons by, and I would say it wasn't like our parents or my parents said, oh, we were in real estate. So of course they probably said, hey, we got to buy a bunch of real estate. But the average family that was being formed 30, 40, 50 years ago wasn't saying, well, we better buy that house quickly because it's going to be worth $1 million someday. No, they said, we're going to buy the house because if we buy a house and we pay for it, nobody can ever kick us out. Right?
Unless they're building the LRT beside you.
Well, then they pay a lot of money for it. But then, right? But we own our own home. And then we don't have a mortgage payment someday, right? And then we can retire and we don't have that's all that the goal was. It wasn't we want to become millionaires. We know we're going to buy this house and become a millionaire. That wasn't the goal.
For tenant, landlord, or homeowner insurance policies, go to squareone.ca/The Tom Storey Show. Use the link in the description. Save $20 when you start your free quote right now.
You talk to people today. We have the incredible opportunity to help people that have been in their houses for 50 and 60 years in Toronto. And we're meeting these great people who have, tell us the stories, how they moved in and they could barely afford it, but they had 2 jobs and they worked late and, they raised 3 kids in an 800 square foot bungalow, and that they still live in today, that they bought for $25,000 or $15,000 or $35,000 or $50,000 or whatever the timeline is. And today they're getting offered $1.4 million. And in this day and age, when the governments are talking about billions of dollars and trillions of dollars, like people, there's so much, it's hard to sometimes put money into context right now. I find it's bizarre. It's such a bizarro world we live in right now. But you think about that for a second. Do you think at any moment in time when they bought that house, 2 jobs, raising 3 kids. Did they ever thought in their wildest dreams it would be $1.4 million at any time in their life?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, it's like that wasn't the purpose. The purpose was we wanted a home to raise our children. We wanted to pay. We knew we had to pay off our mortgage because we didn't want to owe anything. We didn't want debts. That debt is not good, right? Well, if today we did the same thing, and now that we have a ton of history and a better understanding of the way the world works, yeah, everybody should be listening and saying, you know what? I need to think hard and study why now might be a really good time for me to consider my next real estate investment or my first purchase or whatever it might be. Because that will happen. Maybe real estate doesn't, as I said, maybe it doesn't go up at 6.5% or 6.7%. Maybe it goes up at 3.5% rate of inflation, right? I don't know, whatever. Like, how incredible is that story going to be at the end of the day? And then as Tom brought up, if you buy a couple properties extra along the way, look out. It's pretty exciting.
Because I know there's some people, like Chris, I've had more calls this year than ever before where I'm talking to people between 35 and 40 years old that have been renting for the last 10 years, saying like, I want to buy it, even if it's just a 1-bedroom condo, like I'm done. I want to buy a place. But I feel like, and I know based on just the numbers that we get on this podcast, there's people listening to this that are in that zone or older than that still haven't bought a property, and they're hearing this conversation going, well, you know, in 30 years, I'll be 70, but still, even if you did it now and got 0 growth or 2% growth or 2.5% or whatever it ends up being, does that put you financially in a better place when you're 70 than if you continued renting for the rest of your life? And we all know, well, it's hard to say no, but if I was going to put a bet on something, I'd probably put a bet on that. You know, any advice for those people? And again, like I get it. Chris owns a real estate company. Me and Steve are salespeople. I get it, right? Before we give this answer. But there's people in that position right now thinking, I waited too long. I missed the growth. Why would I get in now when there's uncertainty?
Look, it's a great question, Tom. And I think, there's if you are renting now, you have to think if you've been renting for 10 years in the GTA, and let's say you're paying, $30,000 a year in rent, Tom, is that a fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
So 10 years, you've contributed $300,000. Some people are probably getting sick right now, but right. But let's add it up, right? $300,000 you've contributed to the cost of your living, right? You got to live somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. So if I don't know if you can, if you grab a mortgage calculator and you think about if that went to a mortgage payment, what would that have done over the last 10 years? Well, it would have probably paid off a third or probably more of a mortgage, in that a third to half of that money would have gone to paying down a mortgage, the way amortization works, right? So if you've got another 30 or 40 years of runway here, if you have 20 years of runway, 10 years of runway, and you're paying your mortgage versus somebody else's, and you imply a little bit of growth in value along the way, it's a pretty hard story to beat. I can remember about 20 years ago, I advised somebody who was in their 50s, and they came to me and said, what do you think I should do? Should I bother buying a couple of investment properties? I inherited a bit of money and I have this cash, and I'd like, what do you think I should do? Should I put it in the stock market? And I said, no, I really think you should buy some investment properties. And so they went ahead and did that. They bought 2 investment properties, and the value today, and they're 75 years old, is like, I mean, it more than doubled in value, right? I mean, we all wish 15 years ago we'd bought more property, I'm sure. But they bought a couple. They could have put that money in the stock market. I don't know what that would have done for them. It still
would have done well, but nowhere close.
But it would have not been levered. Like, it would have wouldn't have been leveraged, right? Because they put 25% down. They went and bought a couple of properties, and now they put tenants in them. So the tenants have basically paid off the mortgage. I think we're coming up to 20 years. Have basically paid off the mortgage, right, over that time period. The houses have gone up 1.5 times. in value. And they were 55 at the time, now 75 years old. And now they've got probably a couple of $1 million in extra equity that, again, for the really smart finance guys out there, they could plug a, you know, I don't know, a $200,000 investment 15 years ago or 20 years ago in the capital markets and come out. Maybe it comes out the same. I don't know, Tom, but they still have the property. They don't have to lose sleep over every night because the stock market's doing this right now, right? Up and down, up and down. Their tenant every month is delivering them their rent. They're getting cash flow. They've paid off the mortgage. They did everything right. They didn't use it as a ATM along the way. And here they are. And now they're likely going to leave that to their next generation and or donate some money or whatever they plan. I don't know what they plan to do with it, right? And it's a great story. So whether you're, 25 or 55, again, we have to have the grace of good health, to get us along there, because real estate requires time and patience. But, if you're a doomsdayer and you think, gosh, I need to live for the moment, then hey, that's great too. But if you believe there's some longevity ahead of you and you'd like to live in that mindset, then I think, the opportunity is pretty incredible.
You mean you wouldn't have given them better advice of buying Bitcoin and Nvidia 15 years ago? Like, come on,
I'm not that smart.
This advice could have been better.
Well, I'm not that smart. That's the problem. So I need things that are simple and easy to understand and slow and steady. My children, who are 13 and 16, bug me all the time. Dad, why didn't you buy Bitcoin when it was, I don't know, what did it start at, $1 or something? Right? Well, Dad, why didn't you buy some? You could have bought it at da-da-da. And we see these people on TikTok that are, Bitcoin wealthy because they bought it at da-da-da. I don't believe anything you see on social media. So kids, let's have a lesson on that. But hey, I wasn't smart enough. I bought some real estate instead. And, at the end of the day, I know it's still going to be there. I don't have to think about it, and it's going to give us some cash flow. And, that's what I know, and I know it's safe.
Not only am I not that smart, but I didn't buy a detached house in 2015, right? Like, I could you imagine if I did, like, a detached house in 2015 for us was $495, and now it's 3 times that value, easy. So it's just a matter of, getting in where you believe is a good investment. And I just think there's too many people that are going to overlook what is a downturn market right now. It's a legit downturn market. And there's too many people that are going to overlook that. And I think they're going to be regretting it in the future. That future might not be 18 months from now. It might not be 24 months from now. It might not be 5 years from now.
It might get worse
before it gets better. 10 or 15 or 20 years from now.
And I think you have to look at this. Do you believe that interest rates are going to stay here or get lower or at least be at this level for an extended period of time? That's a question. Do you believe that our country is going to continue to grow over time, right? And do you believe that, ultimately we're in a temporary moment of uncertainty around, our largest trading partner? Yes. Yeah, I believe it, but I believe it's temporary. That's my belief. I don't believe this goes on for 4 years. It could be a bumpy ride for 4 years, but I don't.
Even if it's 4 years,
it's even still if it's temporary in the long term,
Yeah. In the long term, like you have to think of real estate in 10, 15, 20-year timelines, not 2, 3, 4-year timelines, which is difficult for some people to, especially in this world of instant gratification, right? And all the things that go on out there, it can be difficult. But if you do think of it and you do believe that Canada is going to be a better place 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, if you believe that, which, I do, I think we live in a great country, and I think there's lots, we have bumps in the road. We haven't done everything right. All the things we have lots of problems. I get it. I get that. But, I believe we're progressing in a positive way. And if you believe that, real estate is likely going to progress along, with that. And so it's a pretty safe long-term, idea.
Chris, I got one final question, or Steve, I'll let you jump in after. This is not, I'm not asking about real estate agents. I'm just talking about general in your life. You have lots of successful friends as well. Is there a common trait you see in people that, for lack of a better term, get shit done? Like, the successful people, what is it about them that makes them who they are, or why they're successful?
Well, you said it.
They do it.
They do it. And that's a differentiator. And I think, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were talking about, you got to find your passion, right? Well, they said, well, it's a bit of a challenge. And I say this to my boys all the time, like, your passion, you'll grow into your passion. Like, you've got to find something that you can at least tolerate.
Mm-hmm.
And that you grow into a passion, but you've got to find something that you can do well, that I hope will grow into a passion. Like I always knew that I wanted to do real estate. I was the kid who followed my father around, to the office at, 4 or 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, knowing and I was inspired by that. But find something that you do, and the people that do, and they do it consistently for a long period of time, those are the ones that are most successful. Mm-hmm. All the people that I know that are incredibly successful, they haven't jumped around and tried this, and well, that didn't work, so I'm going to jump over here and try that. And they found something, and they just plodded away at it. And lo and behold, 20 years later, they're an overnight success, right? As they say, a 20-year overnight success. And they just did that and did that. So it's the people that get stuff done, and they do it consistently for an extended period of time. Mm-hmm. And that combination is deadly successful.
I'll add to that. So I was talking to one of our managing brokers here at McDonald Realty, and we were just having the discussion. He was asking me to reach out to a few agents that are struggling and this sort of thing. And everybody he asked me to reach out to, I was like, I have no idea who they are. Right? Like, they're new agents, but I'm like, listen, you're asking me to reach out to people that I've never seen in my office. And then he made the comment. He's like, you know what? This is the one factor I've seen as far as real estate agents go. He's like, I've never met one that's wildly successful. Like, I've met them that have stuck around in the business, but I've never met one that's wildly successful that didn't at least start their career in the first 5 years of coming to the office every day. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think our industry is going to slide off, because I think we've got these cloud brokerages where people are coming in and they're not exposed to, the grumpy old guy down the hall and the top producer down the hall this way, and the lady that comes in and talks too much and talks your ear off or whatever. Like, they're not exposed to all of these things, and then they don't get in, they don't do the same consistent things every single day, and they think that they can run a business from their basement somewhere, and it's just not successful. So
Steve's obviously been to our office, Chris?
Well, that's the beauty of the industry. You have so many great personalities. But Steve, I agree with you 100%. And I'll say this too: like, look at the major businesses around the world now that are calling everybody back to work.
Yeah.
Right. They're calling everybody and they're saying, "Look, we're going to do it. We're back in the office." Yeah. Whether it's JP Morgan, whether it's Amazon. Look, you have to be in around the energy of what's going on in a business. Mm-hmm. Like, I know they were talking about these work at home and we're so efficient and we're doing all that.
It's BS. It's all BS.
I never bought it. I've never bought it. And we see it, to your point, I agree with you. It's the agent. It's the successful people that come in every day. Our new agents, because we hire a lot of great new people every year who come into our environment, and they're in every day, and they're sitting there and they're listening, and they come up and ask questions, and they're like, what about this? Or I heard this scenario going on. How should I tackle that? And that's why the most successful businesses, JP Morgan, probably the most successful bank in America, Amazon. I mean, look at what Jeff Bezos has done in 25 years. They're calling everybody back to work. Not to make them upset, not to ruin their day, because they know that by getting people into an environment, focusing on the task at hand is critical. And so as an entrepreneur, which we all are in this industry, if people are, like, we're all independent contractors working under an umbrella of a brand business. But if you're sitting at home, like you said, at your dining room table or in your basement trying to toil away, like, respectfully, some people can do it. Maybe, like you said, after 5-10 years, you set up a home office, you've got your rhythm, you've really got your systems in place, and you're rocking it. Which we have very successful, great realtors that follow that path. So it does happen, but you've got to be in an environment for the first 5 at least. I think, to be really on track.
Chris, thank you so much for spending another hour with us. I knew this one flew by. Steve, you got a final question?
I'm going to wrap this up because I think we need a little, as we all do right now. Look at this. See I'm toting this
Canada pin. Yep.
Up here, my little Canada pin. So what I did is I went and I bought a box of Canada pins, and I'm trying to hand them out because I think we
from
need it
Amazon,
right
from an American company that sent them to
you.
probably.
Funny that you bring that up, Tom, because I looked high and low for Canadian made pins, and I wanted to go all Canadian, and I don't know if you guys can see that right there.
Made in China.
Made in China, exactly the way it should be from Canadian products. So I guess at least they labeled it that's what it was, where it was made, and at least we don't have a tariff going there. I guess I don't know what's going on, but anyway, free pins from Steve if you see me running.
We're giving
around
away
these
pins.
days.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think it's important.
And final pitch, if anyone's listened to the end, they're probably a realtor in their car, Chris. So if you're a realtor in the GTA that's looking to make a brokerage change, just like Chris has told everybody that you should educate yourself and fundamentally understand what's happening before making a home purchase, you should do the same thing in your career. And there's a reason I've been with this company for 10 years. So thank you, Chris. Thank you for being here. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. And we will see you next week. Bye. All right. 1 second.